The debate over defunding police hits the campaign trail.
This is going to be a voting issue for a lot of Texans.
As Governor Abbott raises pressure on cities, the defund debate becomes an issue in some campaigns for Congress. We'll look at the impact on a tight race here in Central Texas.
Our number one priority economically needs to be getting people back to work.
We go one-on-one with Senator Ted Cruz, his perspective on the future of coronavirus relief, and his response to the president's list that could send him to the Supreme Court. And the State Board of Education considers changes to sex education, the one thing some people feel is getting left out of the plan. Hello and thank you for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle, and this week I'm joining you once again from my home studio as our crew continues to social distance during the coronavirus pandemic. Well, we start this week with Governor Greg Abbott unveiling a new legislative proposal to prevent cities from defunding police. The governor signed a pledge to back the blue and called on other leaders and candidates to do the same. Then he proposed a legislation to take annexation powers away permanently from cities that defund police. The governor's plan would also let people annexed in the past in those cities vote to remove themselves from the city's jurisdiction.
Combined together, all of these proposals will make it basically financially impossible to defund law enforcement, and it should leave Austin with no choice but to restore the cuts that they've already made to law enforcement.
Abbott had already threatened legislation that would prevent cities that defund police from increasing property tax revenues, and he would consider legislation placing the Austin Police Department under state control. Austin Mayor Steve Adler responded saying, "Austin city leaders have not defunded police and do not support doing so. The city council did vote to cut $20 million from the police budget. Much of the money will be redirected to medical, mental health, and social services." Texas Democratic Party leaders say that Governor Abbott is stoking fears for political gain.
When you say defunding the police, it sounds scary, but what it really is it's a reallocation of resources made by local leaders for what they need. And I think that makes sense for everybody.
The defunding debate is becoming a key issue in some congressional races, including a tight race right here in Central Texas. District 21 includes a mix of urban and rural voters in Central Texas. Political observers call the race a toss-up. First-term Republican Chip Roy faces Democrat Wendy Davis, a former state senator. Politics reporter John Engel asked both candidates how they will address calls for changes to policing.
Everyone just saw.
The Austin City Council is the newest symbol of the defund debate. They cut $20 million from the APD budget and will move another $130 million in services away from police oversight.
This is going to be a voting issue for a lot of Texans, for a lot of Austinites.
Recent polling shows a majority of Texans oppose defunding police. Congressman Chip Roy and Democratic challenger Wendy Davis are locked in what the Cook Political Report calls a toss-up for Texas's 21st congressional district, where issues of policing may play the biggest role before the November election.
And our men and women in blue who stand up defending us and holding the line, they deserve our support. Not blind support, but strong support.
Roy signing Governor Greg Abbott's Back the Blue pledge to oppose any effort to defund police.
But it's being pushed mainly by Republican candidates, in large part because they've seen an opening that the president at the national level is also trying to pry open for them.
I don't think of this as an and or.
Democrat Wendy Davis won't second guess the decision made by the Austin City Council, but said it's okay to support law enforcement while acknowledging some things need to change.
We need to make sure that we ban chokeholds, that we end qualified immunity so that officers can be held responsible when they've violated someone's civil rights, and that we do what it takes for them to have the proper training so that they can provide safety for our communities.
Politics reporter John Engel joins us now to take a deeper dive into this story. Now, John, District 21 covers some urban areas of Austin and San Antonio, but also a lot of rural areas. So is the Back the Blue message aimed primarily at rural voters this time?
Well, Josh, we do know that a recent UT Tyler poll found that 57% of Texans opposed defunding police. So this is clearly becoming a central campaign topic as we march towards the November elections. It's geared towards those suburban family homes. And from political experts responding to this, it's a legitimate concern. you're watching the news at night and you see what is playing out in other parts of the country and wondering how that's going to impact your local police department, impact your family's safety when they're out and about. And so it is a strong message to those households. And we'll have to see how it plays out as we get closer to that election. But it's not just District 21 that is talking about this. In District 25, Congressional District 25, Representative Roger Williams, a Republican, is using this in his campaign ads that are already hitting TV, almost a dystopian warning about what's happening in Austin, this image that the city is in some kind of peril. He's facing off against Democrat Julie Oliver in that race. And it's important to note that Democrats throughout this process have been saying, look, we don't support defunding police. We support changes to policing.
What does defunding police mean to Governor Abbott? Is there a threshold or a definition he's really relying on?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question. And I asked it the other day of Governor Abbott when he was signing that Back the Blue pledge, because look, now we have multiple pieces of proposed legislation that have been put out there to combat cities that quote unquote defund the police. So what does that mean? Governor Abbott, in his first response to me, said, defunding police is what the city councils in Dallas and Austin have done. Not really satisfied with that answer. I came back to it a few minutes later and said, look, this is kind of ambiguous when we talk about defunding without a dollar amount or percentage or what kind of cut. Would this apply to any city that takes away funding or cuts some kind of funding from police for any reason? And he said, yeah, there is going to be ambiguity until the state legislature weighs in on this. He wouldn't offer an opinion of what he wants that threshold to be. So for now, Josh, it's just politics.
How are state lawmakers responding to what the governor's saying?
And as I said, the Democratic Party has come out and said, we do not support defunding the police. And some of the leaders from that party in the state legislature on criminal justice reform are labeling this as some empty rhetoric, a political platform that Republicans are seizing on ahead of November. I talked to Representative Joe Moody of El Paso, who is a leader on criminal justice reform, about this very topic. Let's listen into his thoughts now. So I'm interested to hear your opinion, your take on this anti-defund movement. Does this have anything substantively to do with criminal justice reform?
No, I mean, unfortunately, I think what this is injecting partisanship, partisan politics into what is an issue that really shouldn't be subjected to that. Justice doesn't know party. We need equal justice in this state. There are a lot of different lanes that we can travel in to help accomplish that. Conversations about annexation or property taxes have never entered into those discussions in the last decade that I've been a part of them. My hope is that the political discourse will subside and that clear minds will get back to work on the very pressing issue of race and justice.
Why do you think there's been such a focus from mainly the Republican Party as we march toward November on this anti-defund position?
I mean, like I said, I think this is falling squarely in the lane of politics. The real conversation about police reform starts with, what we want policing to look like, what we want the culture of policing to look like, what issues we want them to handle. We have lumped a lot of things into the lane of policing over time, handling mental health issues, handling substance use, handling homelessness. Well, those are things that police officers aren't really meant or equipped to deal with. So we need to right-size law enforcement, and we need to utilize our resources to handle some of those issues outside of the criminal justice system. Police and prosecutors can't be the solution to every problem in society. We need to find the better home for those. Substance use is a healthcare issue, not a criminal justice issue. And so let's be mindful about that. It's a very complex issue. And I think that's, unfortunately, I can't say this in a hashtag or in 280 characters. And so, it's more complicated than that. And unfortunately, in this day and age, politics is run through Twitter. And unfortunately, I think that's what we're caught in the middle of here.
All right. Well, there you have it. Thank you very much, John Engel.
Thanks, Josh.
It is not enough to ask teenagers not to touch each other.
Hundreds of Texans speak out on moves to change the state's sex ed curriculum. What's new and what's being left out of the plan? Coronavirus relief stalls again on Capitol Hill.
I don't think we're going to see legislation move through Congress between now and Election Day.
We speak with Senator Ted Cruz about the future of the relief package, a one-on-one interview coming up.
I want to see what they're doing out here and how they're able to help so many people.
The state's agriculture commissioner on a mission to learn about medical marijuana, how he's responding to calls to let more patients use the drug. The state's curriculum for sex education has not been updated in more than 2 decades, but that could change before end of the year. The State Board of Education heard from hundreds of Texans last week on proposed changes to standards for health education. State reporter Wes Rappaport listened in.
It is not enough to ask teenagers not to touch each other.
High school senior Ann Fan says the state's sex ed curriculum is outdated.
I cannot tell you how helpful it would have been to have discussed healthy sexual relationships before my friends and I formed ideas of them from pornography.
She's one of about 300 people who testified to the State Board of Education Tuesday about proposed changes to the health education curriculum for elementary, middle, and high school students. The changes include introducing discussion about puberty in 4th grade, adding specifics on contraceptives and abstinence for middle and high school students, and clarifying language relating to sexually transmitted diseases. But for all the work to update 20-year-old standards, the possible changes made no mention of abortion.
I'm not asking for value judgments, just black and white information about abortion.
There's also no reference to lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender education.
I'm not opposed for people to know that there are alternative lifestyles out there. My concern is what that opens up in the realm of teaching materials and how that stuff is taught, and the materials that come from Planned Parenthood and the like organizations that use excessively graphic material, video content.
And the opinions range from refining these plans to abandoning them altogether.
This is a wonderful first step in providing comprehensive and inclusive sex education.
I'm asking the State Board of Education to delete all of the reproductive and sexual health strand in the proposed revisions.
The board's final vote on the proposed changes is in November. I'm Wes Rappaport for State of Texas.
The board's next meeting comes after Election Day, but before newly elected members take office. At least 4 new members will join the State Board of Education in January. Mothers for Medical Marijuana send a message to one state leader, how the Agriculture Commissioner is responding to calls to let more patients use the drug.
It is an immense honor for the president to have that level of confidence in me. Serving on the court is extraordinarily important.
President Trump put him on a list that could send him to the Supreme Court, but would he take the job if he actually got the call? A one-on-one interview with Texas Senator Ted Cruz next on State of Texas. President Trump released a list of 20 people he would consider nominating to serve on the U.S. Supreme Court. His list includes Texas Senator Ted Cruz. There is not a vacancy on the court at this time, but the list gives insight into President Trump's idea of who would make a good justice. Joining us now is Senator Ted Cruz. Welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Josh, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Now, Senator, the president put you on his list of potential Supreme Court nominees. Back in 2016, you said you weren't interested in the high court. Has anything changed since then?
No, nothing's changed on that front. It is an immense honor for the president to have that level of confidence in me. Serving on the court is extraordinarily important. And I've spent much of my adult life fighting to defend the Constitution, fighting to defend the Bill of Rights. That being said, I intend to continue doing so right where I am now, in the U.S. Senate, representing 29 million Texans. I think the challenges to the Constitution and Bill of Rights, the challenges to our liberty, have never been greater than they are right now. And so I am blessed that the people of Texas have entrusted me to serve in the Senate, and I look forward to continuing that fight as long as I am able.
On Thursday, the Senate could not push through a coronavirus relief bill. Do you see a path forward for that relief bill?
You know, unfortunately, I don't. Congress needs to be acting. We are facing 2 simultaneous crises in this country. We're facing a public health crisis with the coronavirus pandemic, and we're facing an economic crisis where over 51 million Americans have lost their jobs in the last 6 months. It's the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. And I believe Congress should be leading by focusing on our number one priority economically, needs to be getting people back to work, helping the millions of small businesses who are struggling open their doors, helping them survive. They're right on the edge between surviving and going under, helping them hire their employees back, and helping Texans be in a position to be able to go to work and provide for their families. Texans want to work. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see legislation move through Congress between now and Election Day. And the reason is that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer have made a political determination that they don't want a deal. They don't want anything to pass. And the reason I believe they've done that is that they have concluded that maximizing economic pain is in their political self-interest. Unfortunately, I think the political gamesmanship that we're seeing from the Democrats is going to continue from now to Election Day.
Another big issue with the election season is defunding police. It's been growing on the campaign trail talking about that. The president has weighed in. We've seen Governor Abbott weigh in. Local leaders say it's their job to make decisions about policing. What's your take? Should Congress or the states get involved?
I think defunding the police is a terrible idea, and it's a really radical and extreme idea. I mean, you think about it, if a couple of months ago, I'd sat down with you and done an interview, and if I had told you the Democrats want to defund the police, Josh, frankly, you would have laughed at me. You would have said, oh, come on now, Ted, that's a little extreme. They're not out there. Nobody's advocating that. Well, I mean, that's exactly where they are, that their response, we're seeing it all across the country. We're seeing it in Minneapolis. We're seeing it in Portland. In New York, the mayor is pushing to cut $1 billion from the NYPD. And sadly, we're seeing it in Austin, Texas, where the city council wants to cut $150 million, a third of the police budget. And that is a terrible idea. The consequence of it will be a lot more violence. And we're seeing violent crime skyrocketing in cities across this country. And, you know, the people who are advocating this, the slogan that you see emblazoned on every NBA court right now is Black Lives Matter. And as a proposition, that is unequivocally true. Yes, Black Lives Matter, unquestionably. If you abolish the police, many, many more Black lives will be lost. If you abolish the police, if you stop protecting high crime, low income neighborhoods where sadly most of the violent crime occurs, we'll see more murders, more sexual assaults, more violent assaults, more robberies, and we're seeing that right now. So this is a policy that will result in more Black lives being lost, more Hispanic lives being lost, more white lives being lost. It's a terrible policy. And instead, what we need to be doing is strengthening the police, standing with the men and women of blue. I am proud to stand with law enforcement. Now, importantly, standing with law enforcement doesn't mean that everything every police officer does is always right. What occurred in Minneapolis with George Floyd was horrific. We all saw that video. There's no legitimate law enforcement purpose for an officer to put his knee on the neck of a person who is handcuffed and restrained and not posing a threat for nearly 9 minutes. And there is a reason those officers are being criminally charged, because they broke the law. The answer to those individuals breaking the law is not to try to defund and abolish police departments all across the country, which only endangers more lives and makes all of us less safe.
Senator Ted Cruz, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Josh.
CNN's Jake Tapper will interview Senator Cruz as part of the Texas Tribune Festival. The discussion will stream online at noon next Friday. It will be available on demand for TribFest ticket holders. You can find ticket information at tribfest.org. The Texas Agriculture Commissioner on a mission to learn more about marijuana.
They help so many people, whether it's epilepsy, people with cancer, autistic children. This is a fantastic natural medicine.
How he's responding to calls to let more Texans use medical marijuana. Growing marijuana is legal on a limited level in Texas. On Thursday, the state's Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller toured Compassionate Cultivation in Austin. It's one of 3 facilities licensed to grow medical marijuana in the entire state. Miller went to the facility to learn more about the medical cannabis community and to hear perspective from patients. Miller met with a group that included mothers who spoke about how medical marijuana is helping their children. Lawmakers in 2019 approved allowing use of the drug to treat a range of conditions, including autism, epilepsy, multiple sclerosis, and terminal cancer. Miller said he's in favor of expanding the use even further.
I would certainly expand medical marijuana. If it'll help somebody, I'm for it. You know, whatever it is. I mean, a toothache, I don't care. If it, if it helps, if it's a cure, or if it relieves pain, we should be able to use that.
Miller also said he wanted to learn more about the process of growing medical marijuana and how that may be helpful to farmers aiming to grow hemp in Texas. The first hemp crops in Texas will be harvested this fall. Thank you for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle, and we'll be back next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics. Have a great day.